Welcome to the Constitution Show, brought to you by the American Constitutional Rights Union, dedicated to defending the constitutional rights of all Americans. Here to dive into our National Owner's Manual, the Constitution of these United States. I'm your host, Tom McHale, here with co-host and producer Joe Armacost. Quick thing, producer is defined by the guy who forgets to hit the record button on occasion, I think, right?
Yeah, and I've done that on occasion. I did it just before this show, so the viewers know. I counted us in 3, 2, 1. Oh crap, we didn't hit the record button.
See, we're coming up on another Independence Day, and I thought, those guys were all crotchety back then against the British, and I said, what a perfect opportunity to bust your chops today.
Well, I'm working on being crotchety, Tom, and I'm sure you'll follow through well. Anyway, happy 4th, everybody. And here's Tom to tell you the story of the 4th of July.
Yeah, this is fun stuff. So the 4th of July or Independence Day is really about the Declaration of Independence. And I know this is the Constitution Show, but as we talked about a couple episodes back, there's really 3 documents that represent the magic triangle, or the house of documents that kind of define our country: the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and of course the Bill of Rights. So today we're going to take a little diversion and share some of the interesting and fun history that led to this day, July 4th. How about it? We got to be brief on some of these things, because we could write history books about the whole process leading up to it. But the bottom line is this: background, go back, rewind to mid 1700s. Years and years, tensions had been growing between the British and lots of colonists, not all, but lots of them. So through the 1760s, the British implemented a series of onerous acts, that ticked off a whole lot of people, driving up costs and levying taxes, that whole taxation without representation thing, right? So, this festering continues to grow. And by 1770, we had the Boston Massacre, a snowball fight protest gone horribly wrong. People died. 1773, the Boston Tea Party. So frustration is growing, right? So by 1774, September, people have gotten frustrated enough to create a Congress. Things are bad when the right answer is to create a Congress, right? So at this time, the First Continental Congress decides to meet to figure out how to deal with the British and all this tyranny in a more unified way, because we weren't a nation at that point. We were just 13 totally independent colonies, right? So a lot of the folks there, just wanted to, I wouldn't say appease, but wanted to, work this out with the British. It's like, hey, this is out of control, guys. Let's sit and talk and, come to a rational agreement here. Others, like Samuel Adams, they were ready to escalate back at that time. But, I won't call them pacifists, but the mediators and negotiators won out. And the result of that First Continental Congress was kind of a weak, angry, but weak letter to the king. And the funny thing is, it's questionable whether he even saw it, with all the chaos going on in Parliament and all that. So anyway, the First Continental Congress really didn't accomplish too much, and things continued to get ugly. By April 1775, the British were basically in a position of, hey, this is a rebellion going on here, so we gotta take some action. And one of the actions they decided to take was say, hey, we got to get rid of all stockpiles of weapons. We're going to go seize them and claim them. So off they go to Lexington. We all recognize that word, right? From the shots heard around the world. Tensions were high. About 80 militiamen kind of gathered in Lexington under the leadership of one very manly guy, a Captain Parker. He has a great quote on that, and it goes something to the effect of, hey, hold your fire, and, unless things get really nasty. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here.
That was Captain Parker, correct?
Yeah, that was Captain Parker. Pretty impressive guy, right? So anyway, they're all facing off in Lexington here. A shot gets fired. Nobody really knows what started it. Fighting breaks out. British soldier gets wounded. I think 8 militiamen were killed and another 10 wounded. So this was serious business, right? So the British Army regroups and they say, hey, we're going on to Concord to continue this search for weapon stockpiles. But the the colonists and the militia, they were kind of on the ball on this stuff, and they had already taken all the weapons and hidden them elsewhere. So it's like, okay, you guys go ahead. But we're going to follow you and watch, right? Observers. So the British Army goes to Concord. Another much larger group of militiamen show up there. Again, someone fires a shot. All chaos breaks loose. There's shooting and fighting. The British start to make their way back to Boston. Now, during this process, as they're headed back to Boston, this is where I think we're getting into serious war, kind of stepping past rebellion, because thousands of militiamen are flocking to the area from all over, and they're harassing the British, setting ambushes, chasing them all the way back to Boston, inflict lots of casualties. And by the end, there's some 15,000 colonists were, involved in this fight and the subsequent surrounding of Boston proper. So I bring that up because here we are, in 1775, early April 1775. That looks like a war to me, right? I think. But anyway, so, a little bit of time goes on, and the colonies agree, hey, we've got to get organized. We're basically at war, and we got to figure things out, like what uniforms are we going to wear? Can we declare war as a group of colonies, hire generals, and all these things, right? So this Second Continental Congress kind of assumed the role of, and I'm using air quotes here, a national governing body, for the purposes of organizing this resistance against the British. So time goes on, they're working on all this stuff, and we get to July 5th, 1775. And the Second Congress approves a new angry letter called the Olive Branch Petition. But this one basically says, hey, we're looking for a peaceable resolution to this, which is funny. Remember, there's war going on at this point. But it's really, we really want you to work with us here. And, this was a little bit of a charade, because just one day later, July 6, 1775, the very same Congress created another document called the Declaration of the Causes and Necessity of Taking Up Arms, which was a much more serious complaint against the British government. Just read the title of that, right? Causes and Necessity of Taking Up Arms, right?
Yeah, so, that has much stronger meaning or sounding than the olive branch.
Yeah, exactly. So we're past negotiating, right?
Yes, we're done with that. Okay.
Exactly. So quick, interesting diversion. And I want you to hold this thought for a second. So a guy named John Dickinson, of Dickinson College, was the formal author of this document, the precursor to the Declaration of Independence. But it was Thomas Jefferson who did much of the early writing of this Declaration of the Causes, right? So hold that thought for just a second. So Second Congress, Continental Congress continues. It's now June 1776. That's our magic year, right? Everybody knows 1776, independence, declaration, all these things, right? So the calls for independence were loud and clear, but there was still disagreement as to whether this was the right time to take this bold step. I mean, you're going to war and putting this down on paper that we're going to take on the most powerful army in the known world. A bunch of ragtags are going to do this, right? So they're like, hey, we got to go back. The delegates are going to go back to their states. We're going to, be sure. We're going to make sure we have the authority we need, blah, blah, blah. So the group decides to leave a committee of 5, including one of which was Thomas Jefferson, to draft a formal declaration saying, we intend to be an independent nation. So during this recess, remember, it's June 1776 in Philadelphia. It's very hot. Thomas Jefferson is sitting upstairs in a rented second floor bedroom in town, probably wearing his wool coat and giant wig and all that stuff, presumably just sweating himself to death, writing and writing and writing and writing. So he's working on this declaration, and he finally finishes it, and he submits it to the committee of, the other 4 remaining on the committee. And, they like it, and they approve this thing, and they send it to the full Congress on June 28th, 1776. So they take a couple of days to look at it. And on July 2nd, not July 4th, but on July 2nd, the Second Continental Congress resolved to formally declare independence from England, with 12 of the 13 colonies in support. Okay, Joe, you got to make a guess here. Which colony do you think abstained from this?
Which I don't know, Tom. You tell me.
New York.
New York.
New York abstained. Okay, I'm just kidding. Those of you who live in New York, we're just playing around. Okay, so anyway, so they do a verbal vote and they say, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to declare independence. So let's clean up this document, right? So over the next 2 days, they're tinkering with the final language. They finally agreed to strike 2 points that Thomas Jefferson was really passionate about including in this document. And there's another little trivia sideline that's just fascinating. The first point that Jefferson really wanted in this Declaration of Independence was a complaint against the British people for allowing their king to become such a tyrannical weenie. I don't think he used the word weenie, but he basically wanted to condemn the whole of the British people, say, why have you guys done this to us? And let things get to this point that we have to go to war with you, right? So he was kind of ticked off about that.
Yeah, weenie wasn't part of the vernacular about that. No.
I don't think. I know we'll look it up and verify that on the next show maybe, but I don't think he used the word weenie. So anyway, so the second point, and this is a whole episode on its own. They took out a blistering condemnation against slavery and the British slave trade. Remember, this is Thomas Jefferson's passionate point. He was the one, he wrote this blistering condemnation against slavery and the British slave trade. Fascinating, because Jefferson had slaves, but he was very opposed to the idea of slavery. Right. So we can't get into that here. That's a whole episode. I promise we'll do it because it's another fascinating story. So anyway, it turned out that July 4th was the day that all the details were ironed out in the written version of the final Declaration of Independence. So one more cocktail party trivia nugget, okay? John Adams, we all know that name. He kind of miscalculated our future national holiday just a bit, because he put out his famous quote of the time was, the second day of July 1776 will be the most memorable epocha in the history of America. Hey, he was only off by 2 days, right? But that's okay. We'll cut him some slack on it. So anyway, there we have it. July 4th, Independence Day marks the day when we agreed formally to separate from jolly old England, knowing that it meant full-scale war against the most powerful army in the world. So there was a whole lot more to do. Fighting didn't cease formally until the 1783 Treaty of Paris. So when you go out to fire up the grill and sparklers, remember our predecessors who made the big commitment to fight for the freedoms we enjoy today. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Constitution Show. Remember, we're in charge of this country, and while it doesn't seem like it at times, we're in charge of its government as well. Until next time, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, share it with your friends and family, and if you got something to say, drop us a line at theconstitutionshow@theacru.org.
Happy 4th, everyone.
All right.